In the vast expanse of space where civilizations rise and fall like distant stars, there exists a universal truth that every species learns too late. Never underestimate the prey. The Zephyrians, apex predators of the Andromeda sector, had hunted across 1,000 worlds, their wolf-like form striking terror into the hearts of countless species. Their massive ships served as both vessels and hunting grounds, where captured beings were kept as living food stores. But when their latest catch included a single human engineer named Marcus Chen, they unknowingly brought aboard something their ancient pack mentality couldn't comprehend, a creature that didn't just adapt to survive, but transformed adversity into opportunity. What began as a death sentence would become the greatest pack revolution in Zephyrian history. This is the story of how humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our weapons, but our ability to turn the natural order upside down and make our enemies into our greatest allies. Sometimes the hunted becomes the hunter, and sometimes the prey becomes the pack leader. The Zephyrians called it the Alpha Protocol, humans call it survival. Marcus Chen had always believed that the worst day of his life was when the Terran colony ship New Horizon suffered a catastrophic engine failure 3 months out from Earth. He had been wrong. That honor belonged to the moment he regained consciousness in what could only be described as a living nightmare. The holding cell was a cramped metal box, barely large enough for him to stretch his arms. The air tasted of recycled atmosphere mixed with something organic and unpleasant. Through the bars, he could see other cells containing various alien species, most of whom appeared to be in various states of despair. The lighting was dim, casting long shadows that seemed to move on their own. Marcus pressed his face against the cold metal bars and tried to piece together what had happened. The last thing he remembered was working frantically in the engine room of the New Horizon, trying to prevent a core breach while the ship was under attack. The enemy vessels had appeared out of nowhere, sleek and predatory in design. Then came the boarding parties, and everything went black. A low growl echoed through the corridor, sending chills down Marcus's spine. Heavy footsteps approached, accompanied by the sound of claws clicking against metal flooring. When the creature came into view, Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. The being stood nearly 8 feet tall, covered in dark gray fur with patches of silver along its muscular frame. Its head was unmistakably wolf-like, with piercing yellow eyes that seemed to evaluate everything as either threat or prey. The creature wore minimal clothing, mostly leather straps that held various tools and weapons. Its hands, while possessing opposable thumbs, ended in razor-sharp claws that looked capable of tearing through steel. The wolf being stopped in front of Marcus's cell and sniffed the air. When it spoke, its voice was a deep rumble that seemed to vibrate through the floor. "Human," it said in accented but understandable English. "You are awake." Marcus forced himself to stand straight, meeting the creature's gaze despite every instinct telling him to cower. "Where am I? What happened to my ship?" The wolf being tilted its head, a gesture that might have been curious or amused. "Your vessel is debris. You are aboard the Bloodfang, hunting ship of the Zephyrian pack." It gestured with one clawed hand toward the other cells. "You joined the feeding stock." "Feeding stock?" Marcus's voice cracked slightly on the words. "Fresh meat is preferred over preserved rations," the creature explained with casual indifference. "The weak are consumed first. The strong may last longer, provide better sport." It leaned closer to the bars, its breath hot against Marcus's face. "Tell me, human, are you weak or strong?" Marcus's mind raced. He had studied xenobiology during his engineering training, enough to recognize predator behavior when he saw it. The wolf being wasn't just threatening him, it was testing him. "I'm an engineer," he said, keeping his voice steady. "I keep things running that others can't fix." The creature's ears perked up slightly. "Engineer? Your species builds machines? We build everything. Ships, stations, terraforming equipment. weapons. Marcus took a calculated risk. I notice your ship has some engine harmonics that suggest inefficient power distribution, probably costing you 15% fuel efficiency. For a moment, the wolf being just stared at him. Then it threw back its head and released a sound that might have been laughter if wolves could laugh. Clever prey, you seek to make yourself useful. It turned and began walking away. We will see if your words hold truth, human. As the creature's footsteps faded, Marcus sank back against the wall of his cell. Through the bars, he could see other prisoners watching him. There was a tall, blue-skinned being with 4 arms in the cell across from him, and something that looked like a giant insect in the corner. Most seemed resigned to their fate, but a few watched him with something that might have been hopeful. The days that followed established a routine of sorts. The Zephyrians, as Marcus learned they were called, would periodically select prisoners for what they euphemistically called the hunt. These individuals would be taken to what Marcus assumed was some sort of arena or hunting ground within the ship. None returned. During feeding times, Marcus began to establish communication with his fellow prisoners. The 4-armed being was named Keth Ba, a former starship navigator whose vessel had been captured 6 months ago. The insect-like creature called itself Xerix and had once been a weapons specialist. There were others, a rock-like being named Gurun who had been a miner, and a small, furry creature called Pip who seemed to have been some sort of merchant. The Zephyrians have been hunting the galaxy for generations, Kethvi explained during one of their whispered conversations. They are the apex predators of this sector. No one has ever successfully resisted them. There must be some way, Marcus insisted. Every system has weaknesses. Xerix clicked its mandibles in what Marcus had learned was the equivalent of a bitter laugh. Their weakness is their strength. They are perfect hunters, perfect killers. They know only the way of the pack. But Marcus had noticed things during his time in captivity that the others seemed to have missed or dismissed. The Zephyrians were indeed pack-oriented, but their hierarchy was rigid and based entirely on physical dominance. The smaller, weaker members of the pack performed menial tasks while the larger, more aggressive ones held positions of authority. More importantly, he had observed their technology. While the Zephyrians were clearly advanced, their engineering was crude by human standards. They built things to last and to intimidate, but not necessarily to be efficient. Their weapons were powerful but energy-hungry, and any time their life support systems were robust but wasteful. Most telling of all, their ship's computer systems were basic, lacking the sophisticated AI networks that humans took for granted. It was on his 7th day of captivity that Marcus got his chance. One of the younger Zephyrians, apparently low in the pack hierarchy, was performing maintenance on the energy distribution panel near the prisoner cells. The creature was struggling with what appeared to be a complex systems diagnostic. "You're checking the wrong subsystem," Marcus called out quietly. The young Zephyrian looked up, startled. It was smaller than most of the others Marcus had seen, with lighter-colored fur and eyes that held more intelligence than aggression. "What did you say? Meat?" "Your power distribution problem. You're looking at the primary junction, but the issue is in the secondary relay matrix." Marcus pointed to a different section of the exposed panel. "See those fluctuations in the quantum field stabilizers? That's your bottleneck." The Zephyrian approached the cell cautiously. "How do you know of our systems? Energy is energy. Matter is matter. The principles are the same regardless of who builds the machine." Marcus shrugged. "Basic engineering." For several minutes the young Zephyrian stared at the panel, then at Marcus, then back at the panel. Finally, it made some adjustments to the area Marcus had indicated. Immediately, the lights in the corridor brightened, and a subtle vibration that Marcus had grown accustomed to disappeared. The young Zephyrian's eyes widened. "How did you know?" "Experience," Marcus replied. "What's your name?" The creature hesitated. "I am Scartail. My pack rank is low." There was shame in its voice. Pack rank based on what? Width? Size? Aggression? Strength? Speed? Hunting ability? The ability to kill. Scartail's ears drooped slightly. I am weak in these things, Marcus nodded thoughtfully, but strong in others, I'd guess. You understand the machines better than most of your packmates. Understanding machines is not valued among my people. Only the hunt matters. That seems wasteful, Marcus observed. A pack that doesn't value all types of strength is going to have weaknesses. Scartail tilted its head. What do you mean? Marcus chose his words carefully. Where I come from, we learned that the strongest packs are those where every member contributes their best abilities. The hunter hunts, the healer heals, the engineer engineers. Each strengthens the whole. This is not the Zephyrian way. Maybe the Zephyrian way isn't the only way. Their conversation was interrupted by the approach of heavy footsteps. Scartail quickly gathered its tools and moved away from the cell just as a much larger Zephyrian appeared. This one Marcus recognized as the pack leader he had encountered on his first day. Scartail, the leader growled. Why do you speak with the meat? It helped me fix the power distribution, Alpha Claw Ripper. The human understands machines. Alpha Claw Ripper's yellow eyes fixed on Marcus with new interest. Is this true, meat? Marcus straightened. I told you I was an engineer. I keep things running. The Alpha moved closer to the cell, his massive frame casting Marcus in shadow. Our engineers are weak, but they serve the pack. Perhaps you could serve as well, before you feed us. I could do more than serve, Marcus said, his heart pounding but his voice steady. I could make your ship faster, more efficient, more deadly. I could give your pack advantages that no other Zephyrian pack has ever dreamed of. Alpha Claw Ripper's lips pulled back, revealing impressive fangs. Bold words for prey, but words are wind. If you speak truth, you will prove it. If you lie, he left the thread unfinished. I'll need access to your engineering systems, and I'll need Scartail to assist me. The younger members of your pack might learn faster than the older ones. For a moment, Marcus thought he had overplayed his hand. The Alpha's eyes blazed with something that might have been rage. But then, surprisingly, the large Zephyrian threw back his head and howled with what could only be amusement. You bargain like a pack leader, little meat. Very well, you will have your chance. But know this, if you fail, your death will be slow and public. The pack will feast on your failure. As the Alpha stalked away, Scartail looked at Marcus with something approaching awe. You spoke to Alpha Claw Ripper as an equal. No one does this. Everyone deserves to be treated as an equal until they prove otherwise, Marcus replied. Now, when do we start? The answer came sooner than expected. Within hours, Marcus found himself escorted by Scartail and two larger guards to the engineering section of the ship. The space was impressive in its scope, multiple levels of machinery and conduits stretching up into shadows. But Marcus's trained eye immediately saw the inefficiencies he had suspected. Your people build strong, he told Scartail as they walked through the engineering bay. But you build like you're expecting everything to break down in combat. Combat is the Zephyrian way, Scartail replied. We must be ready to fight at any moment. True, but you're sacrificing so much efficiency for redundancy that you're actually making yourselves weaker overall. Marcus paused in front of a massive reactor assembly. This thing is putting out maybe 60% of its potential because you've got so many backup systems running simultaneously that they're creating interference patterns. He began pointing out specific modifications that could be made, explaining the principles behind each one. Scartail listened intently, occasionally asking questions that showed a sharp understanding of the concepts. Marcus found himself impressed by the young Zephyrian's quick grasp of complex engineering principles. Your people have the raw intelligence for this, Marcus told him. They just haven't been encouraged to develop it. The pack leaders believe that complex thinking makes warriors weak, Scartail explained. They say it is better to be strong and simple than clever and weak. What do you think? Scartail was quiet for a long moment. I think that the human engineer who was captured and imprisoned found a way to speak to our alpha as an equal, while our strongest warriors could only think to threaten and posture. That's a very intelligent observation. They spent the next several hours working together, with Marcus explaining modifications and Scartail implementing them. The results were immediate and dramatic. Power efficiency increased by 20% within the first hour. Engine output improved by 15%. Most impressively, they managed to reduce the ship's sensor signature by 30% without any loss of capability. Word of the improvements spread through the ship quickly. Other young Zephyrians began appearing in the engineering bay, initially just watching, but eventually asking questions. Marcus found himself teaching impromptu lessons on everything from quantum mechanics to systems integration. It was during one of these sessions that Alpha Claw Ripper appeared, flanked by several of his senior pack members. The large Zephyrian stood silently for several minutes, watching Marcus explain the principles behind power flow optimization to a group of fascinated young engineers. "You have improved our ship," the Alpha said finally. "We're just getting started," Marcus replied. "Give me a month and I'll double your combat effectiveness. And what do you want in return?" "Meat?" Marcus had been thinking about this moment since his first conversation with Scartail. "I want to live. And I want my fellow prisoners to live. But more than that, I want to help your pack become the strongest in the galaxy." Alpha Claw Ripper's eyes narrowed. "You seek to join our pack? I seek to help your pack realize its true potential. You're hunters, yes. Predators. But you're also engineers, scientists, explorers. You're wasting 90% of your capabilities because you only value one type of strength." The Alpha was silent for a long moment, considering. Around them, the young Zephyrians watched tensely. Finally, Claw Ripper spoke. "You will continue your work, but you remain prey until you prove yourself worthy of pack status. This will require more than clever words and machine tricks." As the Alpha and his entourage left, Scartail moved close to Marcus. "You walk a dangerous path, human. Pack status is not given to outsiders." "Everything worth doing is dangerous," Marcus replied. "The question is whether the risk is worth the reward." Looking around at the young Zephyrians who were eagerly returning to their work, learning and growing in ways their culture had never encouraged, he wasn't just fighting for his own survival anymore. He was fighting to help an entire species discover what they could become. The transformation had begun, though none of them yet realized how far it would go. The prey was already becoming something else entirely, something the Zephyrian pack mentality had no name for. Something that would change everything. 3 weeks into his new role as the ship's unofficial chief engineer, Marcus Chen had learned more about Zephyrian society than most xenoanthropologists would gather in years of study. What he discovered both fascinated and troubled him. The Zephyrians were indeed apex predators, but their social structure was more complex than simple pack dynamics. Each ship operated as an extended family unit, with Alpha Claw Ripper serving as both leader and patriarch. Beneath him were the senior hunters, the warriors who had proven themselves in combat and earned the right to mate and raise offspring. Below them were the junior hunters, young adults still proving their worth. At the bottom of the hierarchy were the technical specialists like Scartail, considered necessary but inferior. "It is the way of things," Scartail explained during one of their work sessions. "Strength rules, intelligence serves." "But what if intelligence could become a form of strength?" Marcus asked as he calibrated a sensor array. "What if your people could hunt not just with claws and teeth, but with minds and machines?" Scartail's ears twitched. A sign Marcus had learned indicated deep thought. The elders would say such thinking is corruption. They believe that too much reliance on tools makes the hunter weak. 7. Marcus paused in his work. "Tell me about the elders." "They are the oldest of our kind, those who remember the great hunts of the past, They guide pack policy and preserve our traditions. Scartail's tone carried a mixture of reverence and something else Marcus couldn't quite identify. Elder Bone Nower leads them, Teddy. He is traditional in his thinking. As if summoned by their conversation, a new presence entered the engineering bay. The creature that approached was ancient by Zephyrian standards, its dark fur streaked with white and silver. Unlike the younger pack members, this elder moved with careful deliberation, each step calculated and precise. When it spoke, its voice carried the weight of countless years. So this is the talking meat that has captured the attention of our youth. Marcus straightened, meeting the elder's calculating gaze. I'm Marcus Chen, engineer. I'm here to help your pack reach its full potential. Elderbone Nower circled Marcus slowly, sniffing the air. I smell fear on you, despite your bold words. Good, fear keeps prey alive longer. It gestured to the modified equipment surrounding them. You have made changes to our ship. Improvements, Marcus corrected. Your power efficiency has increased by 30%, your sensor range has doubled, and your stealth capabilities have crutches, the elder interrupted, tools that make warriors soft. In my youth, we hunted with fang and claw alone. We needed no machines to make us deadly. Marcus felt the tension in the room increase as the young Zephyrians working nearby stopped what they were doing to listen. This, he realized, was more than just a casual inspection. This was a test, possibly a trial. With respect, Elder, Marcus began carefully, tools don't make warriors weak. They make warriors more effective. A hunter with a spear can kill prey that claws alone could never reach. A pack with better sensors can find prey that would otherwise escape. Bone Nower's lips pulled back in what might have been a smile or a threat display. And what happens when the spear breaks? When the sensors fail? Does the warrior die because he has forgotten how to hunt with his natural weapons? A wise warrior maintains all his skills, Marcus replied. He uses tools to extend his capabilities, not replace them. The strongest pack is the one that can adapt to any situation, use any advantage, overcome any obstacle. The elder was silent for a long moment. Then, without warning, it moved faster than Marcus would have thought possible for such an aged creature. One clawed hand stopped just short of Marcus's throat, the razor-sharp talons gleaming in the artificial light. And what advantage would you use against me, clever meat? Marcus felt his heart racing, but he forced himself to remain still. I would use my intelligence to avoid fighting you in the first place. Conflict should be the last resort, not the first choice. Cowardice, Bone Nower growled. Strategy, Marcus countered. A dead warrior serves no pack. A living engineer can make an entire pack stronger. For several tense seconds, the elder held its position. Then, slowly, it withdrew its claws. Interesting words. We will see if your actions match them. It turned to address the young Zephyrians. You pups think too much and hunt too little. Do not let this creature's cleverness make you forget what you are. As the elder departed, Marcus released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Scartail approached cautiously. Elder Bone Nower is not convinced by your words, the young Zephyrian observed. I didn't expect to convince him, Marcus replied, but I needed to show him that I'm not trying to replace Zephyrian values. Just expand them. Their conversation was interrupted by an alarm klaxon echoing through the ship. Red lights began flashing, and Marcus could hear the sound of running feet in the corridors outside the engineering bay. Scartail's ears perked up, and he tilted his head as if listening to something Marcus couldn't hear. Combat alert, Scartail explained. We have found prey. Within minutes, the engineering bay filled with activity as the young technical staff prepared the ship for combat. Marcus watched, fascinated despite the circumstances, as the Zephyrians transformed from curious students into efficient warriors. Their movements became more coordinated, more purposeful. What kind of prey? Marcus asked. Unknown vessel, Probably a merchant ship from one of the trade routes. Scartail was checking readouts on a dozen different systems simultaneously. Standard hunting protocol. Marcus frowned. You attack merchant ships? Civilian vessels? Prey is prey, Scartail replied matter-of-factly. Though the pack prefers ships with fighting capacity, better sport, stronger meat. For the first time since his capture, Marcus felt genuinely conflicted. He had been working to help these beings, growing to respect and even like some of them. But they were predators in the truest sense, raiders who attacked innocent travelers. The thought of the crew of that unknown vessel facing the same fate he had narrowly avoided made his stomach turn. The prey ship is not responding to our hail, announced one of the other young engineers monitoring communications. They are attempting to flee. Then we hunt, Scartail said with satisfaction. Marcus watched the tactical displays showing the pursuit. The Bloodfang was indeed faster and more maneuverable than it had been before his modifications, closing distance on the fleeing vessel with predatory efficiency. Within minutes, they were in weapons range. Disable their engines, but do not destroy the ship, came Alpha Claw Ripper's voice over the comm system. We want the crew alive for the hunt. Marcus felt sick as he watched the energy weapons discharge, precisely targeted to cripple rather than kill. The unknown vessel's engine signature died almost immediately, leaving it drifting helplessly in space. His improvements to the weapons systems had made this attack more efficient, more successful. Boarding parties are deploying, Scartail reported. The hunt begins. But something was wrong. Marcus could see it on the sensor readings even before the young Zephyrians noticed. The disabled ship's power signature was all wrong for a merchant vessel. It was too stable, too well shielded, too organized. Scartail, Marcus said urgently, look at those readings. That's not a civilian ship. The young Zephyrian's ears flattened against his skull as he examined the data. You are correct. Power distribution suggests military-grade systems. Weapon signatures are masked but present. This is a warship disguised as a merchant vessel. A trap, Marcus breathed. As if on cue, the disabled ship suddenly blazed with weapon fire. The first salvo caught the Zephyrian boarding craft completely by surprise, vaporizing two of them instantly. The third managed to return fire before it too was destroyed. Boosh! Scartail howled, his voice carrying the rage and shock of a predator who had suddenly become prey. The tactical display showed the truth of the situation. The unknown vessel wasn't alone. 3 more ships had been lying in wait, their stealth systems hiding them until the Bloodfang was committed to the attack. Now they revealed themselves, surrounding the Zephyrian ship with overlapping fields of fire. Terran Confederation Navy, came a transmission over all frequencies. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. Marcus felt his heart stop. Terran! Human. His own species had come hunting the hunters. All warriors to battle stations! Alpha Claw Ripper's voice boomed through the ship. Prepare for combat! We will show these weak mammals what true predators can do. But Marcus was looking at the tactical readouts, analyzing the positioning and capabilities of the attacking ships. The Zephyrians were outgunned, outmaneuvered, and completely unprepared for coordinated fleet tactics. Without intervention, the Bloodfang would be destroyed within minutes. Scartail, he said quietly, your pack is about to die. The young Zephyrian's eyes met his. Then we die with honor, fighting to the end. There's another way, Marcus said, but it means trusting me completely. Before Scartail could respond, the ship shuddered under the impact of enemy fire. Warning lights flashed throughout the engineering bay, and damage reports began flooding the communication channels. The humans are targeting our weapons systems, one of the technicians reported. They seek to disable us before closing for capture. Marcus made a decision that would haunt him for years to come. Moving to the primary communications console, he began typing in codes he hadn't used since his days in the Terran Naval Reserve. What are you doing? Scartail demanded. Saving your pack, Marcus replied grimly, and probably condemning myself. He opened a channel on an emergency frequency that only Terran military vessels would monitor. Terran Fleet, this is Engineer Marcus Chen, registration number 77 Alpha 992. I am alive and aboard the Zephyrian vessel, requesting immediate parley under Code 7 protocols. The weapons fire stopped so suddenly that the silence seemed deafening. Then came a response that Marcus recognized as the voice of a Terran admiral. Marcus Chen, you are listed as killed in action 3 months ago. Confirm your identity. Admiral, my name is Marcus Chen, serial number 77A99266. Delta, I was chief engineer aboard the colony ship New Horizon when it was attacked by these vessels. I am currently working with the Zephyrian crew to improve their ship systems. I formally request parley to discuss terms. Another pause. Then, stand by, Chen. Scartail was staring at Marcus with something between admiration and horror. You are military, a warrior of your own pack. Former military, Marcus corrected. And right now I'm trying to prevent the mutual destruction of two groups that don't have to be enemies. The response came quickly. Chen, you have 5 minutes to explain why we shouldn't blast that ship and everyone on it into space dust. Marcus took a deep breath. Because, Admiral, what you're looking at isn't just a pirate vessel. It's a potential ally in a galaxy that's becoming increasingly dangerous for all of us. What followed was the most intense 5 minutes of Marcus's life. Speaking rapidly but clearly, he explained what he had learned about Zephyrian society, their potential for technological advancement, and the possibility of redirecting their predatory instincts toward more constructive purposes. They're hunters, yes, he concluded. But hunters can be guardians too. Give me time to work with them, and I believe I can help them become protectors of the trade routes instead of predators. The silence stretched for an eternity. Then, Chen, you're asking us to trust the same beings who have been raiding our shipping for decades. I'm asking you to trust me, Admiral, and I'm asking the Zephyrians to trust me too. He turned to Scartail, who had been listening to the entire exchange. I need to speak with Alpha Claw Ripper immediately. Both our species are about to make decisions that will determine whether we have a future together, or whether we destroy each other. Scartail hesitated for only a moment before activating the ship's internal communication system. Alpha Claw Ripper, the human requests immediate audience. The situation has changed. The Alpha's response was swift and angry. Bring the meat to the bridge immediately, and if this is treachery, I will personally tear out its throat. As they made their way through the ship's corridors, Marcus could see Zephyrians at every station, preparing for what they believed would be their final battle. Warriors checked weapons, engineers rerouted power to defensive systems, and communications specialists tried desperately to contact other packs for assistance that would never arrive in time. The Bridge of the Bloodfang was a testament to Zephyrian engineering philosophy. Every surface was designed for function rather than comfort, with multiple redundant systems and heavy armor plating. Alpha Claw Ripper stood at the center of it all, a massive figure surrounded by his senior staff. Explain yourself, meat, the Alpha growled without preamble. Marcus gestured to the tactical display showing the surrounding Terran ships. Your pack is brave, Alpha, but bravery without wisdom is just another word for stupidity. You're outgunned and outmaneuvered. If you fight, you die. We are Zephyrians, Claw Ripper snarled. We do not surrender. I'm not asking you to surrender. I'm asking you to evolve. Marcus moved to the tactical display, highlighting the positioning of the human ships. Look at their formation. Look at their tactics. These aren't merchants or explorers. These are professional warriors, hunters like yourselves, but with different prey. They hunt pirates, raiders, predators who threaten the weak. He turned to face the Alpha directly. What if I told you that you could become the greatest hunters in the galaxy by protecting instead of preying? What if I showed you prey so dangerous and valuable that hunting it would bring glory to your pack for generations? What prey? The real threats to civilization. Slave traders, war criminals, rogue AI systems, extinct species trying to return. Marcus was thinking fast, drawing on every intelligence briefing he had ever attended. The galaxy is full of genuine monsters that need to be hunted. The Terran Confederation would pay handsomely for hunters skilled enough to track them down. You speak of mercenary work? Elder Bone Gower's voice came from behind them. Marcus hadn't heard the ancient Zephyrian approach, hiring our claws for human coin. I speak of evolution, Marcus replied, of becoming something greater than raiders, of building a reputation that will make your pack legendary. The Alpha was silent for a long moment, studying the tactical display. Finally, he spoke. And if we refuse? If we choose to die as warriors rather than live as servants, then you die, Marcus said simply, and everything your pack could have become dies with you. But if you choose to trust me, to let me show you what you could become, then maybe we all live to see what the future holds. Alpha Claw Ripper looked around at his officers, reading expressions that Marcus couldn't interpret. The tension on the bridge was thick enough to cut. Open a channel to the human ships, the Alpha commanded. A technician's claws danced over controls, and suddenly Admiral Morrison's voice filled the bridge. This is Admiral Morrison of the Terran Confederation Navy. I'm prepared to hear what you have to say. Alpha Claw Ripper drew himself up to his full impressive height. I am Alpha Claw Ripper of the Zephyrian pack ship Bloodfang. I speak for my pack in all matters. He paused, and Marcus could see the internal struggle playing out across the Alpha's features. I would hear terms for alliance. The words seemed to echo in the sudden silence. Marcus felt a surge of hope mixed with terror. He had potentially just changed the course of two civilizations, but the real work was only beginning. Stand by, Bloodfang, came Admiral Morrison's cautious reply. We'll need to discuss this development. As the channel closed, Alpha Claw Ripper turned to Marcus. You have bought us time, meat. But time is worthless unless it leads to strength. You promised to show us greater prey. You will have the chance to keep that promise. Marcus nodded. I understand, Alpha, and I won't let your pack down. But even as he spoke, Marcus knew that the greatest challenge lay ahead. He had convinced two groups of natural enemies to stop shooting at each other. Now he had to find a way to make them trust each other enough to work together. The transformation of the Zephyrian pack from raiders to guardians would require more than just words and good intentions. It would require fundamental changes in thinking, in culture, and in the very identity of what it meant to be a hunter in a galaxy full of predators. Looking around the bridge at the faces of beings who had been ready to die in battle just minutes before, Marcus realized that he was no longer just an engineer trying to survive. He had become something unprecedented in both human and Zephyrian culture, a bridge between worlds, a translator not just of languages but of entire ways of being. The real hunt was just beginning. The neutral station that Admiral Morrison had selected for the formal negotiations floated in the void between three-star systems, a massive structure that served as a hub for diplomatic meetings between species who might otherwise shoot each other on sight. Marcus had never seen anything quite like it, a sprawling complex of interconnected modules that could accommodate dozens of different atmospheric requirements and gravitational preferences. The past week had been a whirlwind of preparation. The Bloodfang had followed the Terran fleet to this location under heavy escort, every movement monitored by nervous human captains who still weren't entirely convinced that this wasn't an elaborate trap. Meanwhile, Marcus had worked around the clock with Alpha Claw Ripper and his senior staff to prepare for what might be the most important conversation in Zephyrian history. I still believe this is madness, Elder Bone Nower growled as they prepared to disembark. We are predators, not diplomats. Words are for the weak. Words shaped this meeting, Alpha Claw Ripper replied. The human's words saved our pack when claws and teeth could not. Marcus stood between them, wearing the closest thing to formal attire that could be found aboard a Zephyrian warship. Essentially, his old engineering uniform cleaned and repaired as much as possible. Around him, the Zephyrian delegation prepared for their first formal contact with another species in their recorded history. The delegation itself had been a source of considerable debate. Zephyrian tradition dictated that only the strongest warriors should represent the pack in any external dealing. But Marcus had convinced Alpha Claw Ripper to include Scartail and several other technically minded young Zephyrians. The presence of engineers and specialists rather than just fighters would send a message about the pack's willingness to change. Remember, Marcus said as they walked toward the airlock, these negotiations aren't just about what we can do for them. They're about proving that Zephyrians can be trusted partners, not just contained threats. The transition from the Bloodfang to the neutral station was jarring in more ways than one. The sterile multi-species architecture of the diplomatic facility stood in sharp contrast to the organic, predator-focused design of the Zephyrian ship. More significantly, the presence of multiple alien species in the station's corridors made several of the Zephyrian warriors visibly uncomfortable. "So much prey in one place," murmured Sharp Fang, one of the younger warriors in their group. "Potential allies," Marcus corrected firmly, "and potential witnesses to how Zephyrians conduct themselves in civilized company." Admiral Morrison was waiting for them in Conference Chamber 7, a vast room with environmental controls that could accommodate a dozen different species simultaneously. The Admiral was a stern-faced woman in her 50s, with the bearing of someone who had spent decades making life-or-death decisions. She was flanked by two other Terran officers and, to Marcus's surprise, "Admiral Morrison," Marcus said, offering a formal salute. "Thank you for agreeing to these talks." "Engineer Chen," the Admiral replied coolly. "I hope you understand the magnitude of what you're asking. The Zephyrian pack ships have been a menace to shipping for decades. Changing that relationship will require more than good intentions." Alpha Claw Ripper stepped forward, and Marcus was impressed to see that the massive Zephyrian had clearly made an effort to appear less intimidating. His weapons were ceremonial rather than practical, and his posture, while still commanding, was less aggressively dominant than usual. "Admiral Morrison," the Alpha said in carefully practiced standard. "I am Alpha Claw Ripper. I speak for the Bloodfang Pack. We come to discuss alliance, not surrender." "Noted," Admiral Morrison replied. "Let me introduce the others. This is Ambassador Veltran of the Centauri Republic, Hive Mind Designate Zek, 9 of the Silicon Collective, and Trade Representative Gorlock of the Asteroid Miners Consortium. They're here because Zephyrian raids have affected all of our shipping lanes. The presence of multiple species created an interesting dynamic that Marcus hadn't fully anticipated. Each had their own perspective on the Zephyrian threat and their own requirements for any potential agreement. Ambassador Veltran, a tall blue-skinned humanoid with gill slits behind her ears, was the first to speak. "The Centauri Republic has lost 47 vessels to Zephyri attacks in the past 5 years. Before we discuss alliance, we must address reparations for past damages." Alpha Claw Ripper's ears flattened slightly. "The strong take from the weak. This is the way of nature." "Perhaps," interjected Hive Mind Designate Zek. 9. Its mechanical voice emanating from a complex robotic form. "But civilization requires moving beyond mere nature. The Silicon Collective is interested in the technological implications of this proposed alliance. Zephyrian biotechnology could be valuable if properly directed." Trade Representative Gorlak, a squat, rock-like being that looked somewhat like the prisoner Marcus remembered from the Bloodfang's holding cells, rumbled its response. "The Miners Consortium wants guarantees. Our transports carry the raw materials that keep the galaxy running. We need protection, not pretty words." Marcus could see the confusion on the faces of the younger Zephyrians. This kind of multi-party negotiation was completely outside their cultural experience. In Zephyrian society, disputes were settled through dominance displays or combat. The concept of competing interests being resolved through discussion was alien to them. "If I may," Marcus interjected, "I think we're approaching this from the wrong angle. Everyone here is thinking in terms of what the Zephyrians owe, or what they've taken. But what if we focus on what they can give in the future?" He moved to the room's central holographic display, calling up a star chart of the local region. The Zephyrians have capabilities that no other species possesses. They're natural hunters with ships designed for stealth and speed. They understand predator behavior better than any police force or security service. Instead of seeing them as a threat to be contained, what if we see them as a resource to be directed? Admiral Morrison leaned forward. "Explain. Piracy, smuggling, slave trading, illegal weapons development, all of these activities require the same skills that Zephyrians excel at: tracking, hunting, infiltration, combat in extreme conditions." Marcus highlighted several systems on the star chart where criminal activity was known to be a problem. Every major trading civilization has threats they can't handle effectively. The Zephyrians could hunt those threats instead of innocent merchants. Elder Bonauer spoke for the first time since entering the chamber. "You speak of turning warriors into servants of alien law?" "I speak of turning raiders into legends," Marcus countered, "which brings more honor to the pack, stealing cargo from defenseless merchants or hunting down criminal masterminds that entire fleets can't catch, which proves greater strength, ambushing the weak, or tracking the dangerous." He could see the idea taking hold in Alpha Claw Ripper's mind. The massive Zephyrian's eyes gleamed with something that might have been excitement. "What prey do you offer?" the Alpha asked. Admiral Morrison looked uncertain, but Ambassador Veltran leaned forward with interest. "The Centauri Republic has been dealing with a particularly elusive group of slave traders in the Outer Rim. They use modified ships and constantly change their routes. Traditional patrol methods have been ineffective. The Silicon Collective has similar concerns with illegal AI research," added Zek 9. "Rogue scientists operating from hidden bases, developing technologies that threaten the stability of synthetic consciousness." Trade Representative Gorlock rumbled agreement. "And the consortium has lost too many shipments to pirates who know exactly when and where our most valuable transports will be traveling. Someone is feeding them information." Marcus could see the Zephyrians responding to these challenges with growing interest. These weren't just crimes to be punished. They were puzzles to be solved, prey to be outwitted and captured. "How would this arrangement work in practical terms?" Admiral Morrison asked. "Joint operations," Marcus suggested. Zephyrian ships work in coordination with regular forces. They provide the hunting expertise and mobility, while Allied forces provide intelligence, logistics, and legal authority. Think of it as a specialized law enforcement unit. Scartail spoke up unexpectedly. "What of the technical knowledge exchange? The human has taught us much about improving our systems. Could this continue?" Hive Mind designates Zek 9's optical sensors focused on the young Zephyrian. "Interesting. The Silicon Collective would be very interested in Zephyrian biotechnology applications. Your ships integrate organic and mechanical systems in ways we have not encountered before." Elder Bone Nauer growled softly. "We do not share pack secrets with outsiders, but knowledge shared makes the pack stronger," Scartail replied, surprising everyone with his boldness in contradicting an elder. "The humans' teachings have already proven this." But Alpha Claw Ripper held up a clawed hand. "Scartail speaks wisdom," the Alpha said slowly. "The human has shown us that strength comes in many forms. Perhaps it is time to learn new forms of strength." The negotiations continued for hours, with each side presenting requirements, concerns, and potential contributions. Marcus found himself serving as more than just a translator. He was a cultural interpreter, helping both sides understand not just what the other was saying, but what they meant by it. The Zephyrians struggled with concepts like legal jurisdiction and due process. The Allied representatives had difficulty understanding the pact-based decision-making process and the importance of honor and reputation in Zephyrian culture. "If we agree to this alliance," Ambassador Veltran said during one particularly tense exchange, "how do we know the Zephyrians won't simply return to raiding when they find legitimate hunting less profitable?" "Because," Alpha Claw Ripper replied with conviction, "the human has shown us greater prey. Why hunt cubs when you can hunt other predators?" It was Trade Representative Gorlak who suggested the solution that ultimately made the agreement possible. Trial period. The Rocky being proposed. 6 months, 1 sector, specific targets. Prove the concept works before expanding it. Admiral Morrison nodded slowly. "I can support that. We'll start with the slave trader problem in the Centauri Outer Rim. If the Zephyrians can successfully capture or eliminate that organization within 6 months, we'll consider expanding the partnership." "And what do we receive in return?" Alpha Claw Ripper asked. "Legitimacy," Marcus said before any of the Allied representatives could respond. "Recognition as guardians rather than predators. Access to better prey than you've ever imagined, and the chance to show the galaxy what Zephyrians are really capable of." The formal agreement took another 3 hours to hammer out, with multiple side discussions and clarifications needed to bridge the gap between radically different legal and social systems. In the end, they had something unprecedented: a formal alliance between a pack of reformed raiders and 4 major galactic civilizations. As they prepared to leave the station, Elderbone Gnauer approached Marcus privately. "You have changed much, human," the ancient Zephyrian said, "but change is not always improvement. You have made promises for the pack that may be impossible to keep." "I know," Marcus admitted, "but the alternative was watching your pack die fighting an unwinnable battle. At least this way, we have a chance. And if we fail? If the pack cannot adapt to this new way of hunting?" Marcus looked out through the station's viewport at the stars beyond. "Then we fail trying to be something better than what we were. I think that's worth the risk." The journey back to the Bloodfang was subdued, with each member of the delegation lost in their own thoughts about what they had just committed to. The pack ship would need modifications to operate alongside Allied forces. The crew would need training in legal procedures and non-lethal capture techniques. Most challenging of all, the pack's entire identity would need to evolve. "The human is right," Scartail said as they settled into the shuttle back to their ship. "This is our chance to become legends. But legends are made through deeds, not words." Alpha Claw Ripper nodded grimly. "Then we will see what manner of legends we can become. The hunt begins." But as Marcus looked around at the faces of the Zephyrians who had just agreed to transform their entire way of life, he couldn't shake the feeling that the real challenge was just beginning. They had 6 months to prove that predators could become protectors, that a species built for hunting could learn to be guardians. The first test would come soon enough. Intelligence reports had already identified the slave trader organization operating in the Centauri Outer Rim. Within days, the Bloodfang would be hunting its first legitimate prey. Marcus only hoped that when the time came, the lessons he had taught about strength and adaptation would be enough to carry them through. Because failure wouldn't just mean the end of the alliance, it would mean the end of everything he had worked to build. The transformation was accelerating, but the final outcome remained uncertain. The prey had become the hunter, but now the hunter would have to become something else entirely, a guardian of the very civilization it had once threatened to destroy. The first hunt as legitimate guardians began badly and seemed destined to end worse. 2 months into their trial period, the Bloodfang hung motionless in the shadow of a rogue asteroid, its crew watching with growing frustration as their quarry once again slipped through their claws. The slave trading organization they had been tasked with eliminating was proving to be far more sophisticated than anyone had anticipated. "They know we are coming," growled Sharpclaw, one of the younger warriors who served as a boarding specialist. "Every time we close on their ships, they vanish like smoke. Marcus studied the tactical display, noting the pattern of near misses and empty coordinates they had encountered over the past weeks. They're not just running randomly. Someone is feeding them intelligence about our operations. Alpha Claw Ripper's ears flattened against his skull, a sign of deep irritation that Marcus had learned to recognize. We hunt shadows while our prey laughs at us. This is not the way of the pack. The frustration was understandable. In their previous existence as raiders, the Zephyrians had been the hunters, striking without warning against unprepared targets. Now they found themselves in the unfamiliar position of being the hunted, their every move anticipated by adversaries who seemed to know exactly how pack ships operated. "Perhaps," suggested Elderbone Nower from his position near the command center, "we should return to the old ways. Hunt prey that does not know our methods. That would end the alliance," Marcus pointed out, "and prove that Zephyrians can't adapt to new challenges." Scartail looked up from his sensor station, his young face troubled. "The human is correct. We have given our word to the allied species. To break it now would bring dishonor to the pack." "Honor does not fill empty bellies," retorted one of the senior warriors. "These slave traders are ghosts. We cannot hunt what we cannot find." Marcus had been thinking about this problem for weeks, and gradually an idea had been forming. It was risky, possibly insane, but it might be their only chance to prove that the alliance could work. "What if we're approaching this backwards?" he said slowly. Alpha Claw Ripper turned his full attention to Marcus. "Explain." "We've been trying to hunt them using traditional pack tactics, stealth, speed, overwhelming force. But they're prepared for that because someone has clearly studied Zephyrian methods. What if we use tactics they wouldn't expect? Such as..." Marcus moved to the tactical display, highlighting the known slave trading routes through the sector. "Instead of hunting them, what if we made them hunt us?" Finally, Elderbone Nower spoke. "You propose to make ourselves prey? This is madness." "Is it?" Marcus challenged. "Think about it. They're avoiding us because they know we're coming. But what if they thought we were just another potential target? What if they tried to capture us?" Scartail's ears perked up as he began to understand. "You want to use ourselves as bait?" "More than that, I want to use our status as reformed raiders against them." Marcus began sketching out his plan on the display. "The slave traders have to know about our alliance by now. News like that spreads fast in criminal circles. They probably see us as traitors to our own nature, Zephyrians who have gone soft and become servants to alien law." Alpha Claw Ripper's eyes gleamed with sudden understanding. "They would see us as valuable prizes. Renegade Zephyrians would bring high prices in the slave markets. And they'd assume that we've lost our edge, become weak through association with civilized species. They might take risks to capture us that they'd never take against a traditional pack ship." The plan that emerged from their discussion was complex and dangerous. They would create the appearance of a ship in distress, broadcasting false technical problems and requesting assistance. When the slave traders responded, expecting easy prey, they would find themselves facing the full combat capability of a Zephyrian pack ship backed by months of human technological improvements. "The risk is enormous," pointed out Navigation Officer Keen-Eye. "If our deception fails, we could find ourselves genuinely captured. And if we continue our current approach," Marcus countered, "we'll fail our mission completely and the alliance will collapse. Sometimes the biggest risk is not taking any risk at all." Preparation took 3 days. They had to make their distress believable without actually damaging critical systems, create false sensor readings that would convince sophisticated criminals, and position backup forces where they could respond quickly if things went wrong. Admiral Morrison had been skeptical when they transmitted their plan to Fleet Command, but she had grudgingly approved the operation after Marcus convinced her that conventional tactics were clearly failing. "Chen," she had said during their final communication before beginning the deception, "if this goes wrong, the alliance dies with your pack. I hope you understand that. But I also understand that if we don't try something different, the alliance dies anyway." Now floating apparently helpless in a debris field that had once been a mining operation, the Bloodfang waited. Their distress beacon painted them as a ship suffering from cascade engine failures, life support problems, and damaged weapons systems. To any observer, they would appear to be a perfect target. "Contact on long-range sensors," Scartail reported quietly. "Single vessel. Approach vector suggests they've been monitoring our transmission." "Alpha Claw?" Ripper asked. "Modified heavy transport. Weapons pods consistent with known slave trader vessels. They are being cautious, staying at maximum sensor range. For 6 hours, the unknown ship stalked them, clearly running detailed scans to verify that the distress was genuine." Marcus found himself impressed by their target's patience and professionalism. "These weren't opportunistic raiders. They were experienced predators in their own right." "Additional contacts," reported Keen Eye. "Two smaller vessels moving to intercept positions. They are coordinating an attack." "Multiple ships," murmured Sharpclaw with satisfaction. "Better prey than merchants." The attack, when it came, was swift and professional. The 3 slave trader vessels approached from different vectors, using the debris field for cover while their weapons powered up. Their opening communications were equally professional. "Zephyrian vessel, you will surrender immediately or be destroyed. Your ship and crew have significant value to our organization." Alpha Claw Ripper looked at Marcus with something that might have been approval. "Your assessment was correct, human. They see us as valuable prizes." "Now comes the hard part," Marcus replied. "We have to let them think they're winning." The next few minutes were among the most terrifying of Marcus's life. Following their carefully rehearsed script, the Bloodfang offered only token resistance as the slave trader ships closed in. They allowed their shields to be weakened, their weapons to be disabled, their engines to be brought to minimal power. "Zephyrian ship, prepare to receive boarding parties. Any resistance will result in immediate execution of your crew." "Multiple transport launches detected," Scartail reported. "Estimated 40 to 50 boarders across 6 small craft." Marcus felt his heart racing as the enemy boarding craft approached their hull. Everything depended on timing now. Too early, and the slave traders might escape. Too late, and the Zephyrians might find themselves genuinely overwhelmed. "Boarding craft are attaching to airlocks 712 and 15, reported the sensor operator. "They're cutting through our hull barriers," added the damage control specialist. Alpha Claw Ripper looked around his bridge, meeting the eyes of each of his officers. "Remember, we are not just fighting for ourselves. We fight for the future of all packs. Today we prove that Zephyrians can hunt any prey, no matter how clever." The first boarders made it 3 steps into the ship before they realized their mistake. What they had expected to find was a demoralized crew of defeated Zephyrians, possibly weakened by their association with civilized species. What they found instead was a pack of apex predators who had been given license to hunt again. The battle was swift, brutal, and completely one-sided. The slave traders were experienced fighters, but they were facing Zephyrians on their home ground. With all the advantages of superior numbers, intimate knowledge of the ship's layout, and weapons that had been designed specifically for close-quarters combat. "Boarding parties neutralized," Sharpclaw reported with satisfaction. "No enemy survivors in sections 7 through 15. But the real prize was yet to come. With the boarding craft trapped in their airlocks, the slave trader ships found themselves suddenly vulnerable. The Bloodfang's weapons and shields came online with startling speed, revealing that the ship had never been as damaged as it appeared. "All enemy vessels, this is Alpha Claw Ripper of the Zephyrian pack ship Bloodfang. The Alpha transmitted on all frequencies. You have attempted to capture representatives of the Terran Confederation Alliance. Surrender immediately or face the consequences." The response was immediate weapons fire from all 3 ships. But the slave traders had positioned themselves for a boarding operation, not a fleet engagement. Their formation was optimized for controlling a single disabled target, not for fighting a fully operational warship. "Enemy command ship is attempting to disengage," reported Keen Eye. "Pursue," Alpha Claw Ripper ordered. "Today we take a live prey for the first time." What followed was a running battle through the debris field, with the Bloodfang using its superior speed and maneuverability to prevent the slave traders from escaping. Marcus watched in fascination as the Zephyrians demonstrated why they had been such effective raiders for so many generations. The first enemy ship was disabled within minutes, its engines destroyed by precise weapon fire. The second lasted slightly longer before losing power. The third, the command vessel, managed to clear the debris field before the Bloodfang caught up with it. "This is your final warning," Alpha Claw Ripper transmitted. "Surrender or be destroyed." The reply came in the form of a desperate ram attempt. But the slave trader captain had misjudged both the distance and the Bloodfang's capabilities. The Zephyrian ship rolled away from the attack with predatory grace, then crippled the enemy vessel with a surgical strike to its main reactor. "All enemy ships disabled," Scartail reported. "We have approximately 200 prisoners across the 3 vessels." Marcus felt a surge of elation mixed with relief. They had done it. Not only had they captured the slave traders, but they had done so while operating within the constraints of their alliance obligations. No unnecessary killing, no destruction of surrendered ships, no violation of the rules of engagement they had agreed to follow. "Transmission to Admiral Morrison," Alpha Claw Ripper commanded. "Mission successful. 3 enemy vessels captured intact. Approximately 200 prisoners taken. Daddy, requesting assistance with prisoner processing and evidence recovery." The response came quickly. "Outstanding work, Bloodfang. Fleet units are moving to your position for prisoner transfer. Admiral Morrison sends her compliments to your pack." As the immediate excitement of the battle faded, Marcus found himself reflecting on what they had accomplished. The Zephyrians had successfully adapted their hunting instincts to serve the cause of justice rather than predation. They had proven that their alliance with civilized species could work. But perhaps more importantly, they had begun to change in ways that went beyond simple tactical adaptation. Throughout the battle, he had watched young Zephyrians like Scartail coordinate with their packmates using principles of cooperation and mutual support that were more sophisticated than traditional pack hierarchy. "The humans' plan was sound," Elder Bone Nower admitted grudgingly as they watched Terran ships arrive to take custody of the prisoners. "Perhaps there is wisdom in thinking like prey to catch predators." "It was more than that," Scartail observed. "We fought not just for ourselves, but for others. We protected the weak by hunting those who would harm them. This is a different kind of strength." Alpha Claw Ripper nodded slowly. "The pack has learned new ways to hunt, but we have also learned new reasons to hunt." He turned to Marcus. "Your people speak of justice. Today, we have tasted it. It is good prey." The aftermath of their successful mission brought changes that Marcus hadn't entirely anticipated. Word of their victory spread quickly through both criminal and legitimate channels. Other slave trading organizations began avoiding the sector entirely, while requests for Zephyrian assistance started arriving from across the Alliance. More significantly, the success seemed to energize the young Zephyrians in ways that traditional raids never had. They had proven themselves not just as warriors, but as guardians. The pride they took in their new role was evident in everything from their posture to the way they maintained their equipment. "We have received 14 new mission requests," Scartail reported during their next planning session. "Smugglers, pirates, rogue AI collectives, and something called an illegal terraforming operation. The galaxy has much prey that needs hunting," Alpha Claw Ripper mused. "Perhaps we have found our true purpose." But Marcus knew that their transformation was far from complete. They had succeeded in their first mission, but that success brought new challenges. Other Zephyrian packs would be watching, some with approval, but others with suspicion or outright hostility. The Alliance would demand more complex operations requiring even greater adaptation and cooperation. Most challenging of all, they would need to maintain their warrior spirit while operating within the constraints of civilized law. The balance between predator and protector would require constant attention and adjustment. "What concerns you, human?" Elder Bone Nower asked. apparently reading the uncertainty in Marcus's expression. "Success," Marcus replied honestly. "It brings new responsibilities and new expectations. We've proven we can hunt criminals. Now we have to prove we can be trusted with greater authority." The elder's ancient eyes gleamed with understanding. "You worry that success will make us soft or that authority will corrupt us." "Both," Marcus admitted. "Power changes those who wield it. I've seen it happen to individuals and entire civilizations." Alpha Claw Ripper rose from his position at the command center. "Then we must ensure that we remember what we hunt for, not just what we hunt. The pack that forgets its purpose becomes no pack at all." Looking around at the faces of the Zephyrians who had become his adopted pack, Marcus felt a mixture of pride and apprehension. They had come so far from the raiders who had captured him months ago, but the hardest tests still lay ahead. The prey had become the hunter, and the hunter had become the guardian. Now they would discover what guardians could become when the galaxy tested their resolve. 1 year after the Alliance began, Marcus Chen stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned Alliance Station Alpha, watching as ships from a dozen different species docked and departed in a carefully orchestrated dance of interstellar cooperation. Among them, unmistakable in their predatory elegance, moved 3 Zephyrian pack ships. The sight still filled him with a mixture of pride and amazement. The transformation had exceeded everyone's expectations, including his own. "The Council is ready for your presentation," announced Lieutenant Commander Sarah Park, his new liaison from Terran Fleet Command. "Admiral Morrison and the other Alliance leaders are eager to hear your final assessment." Marcus nodded, gathering his thoughts as he prepared for what would likely be the most important briefing of his career. The past year had seen the Zephyrian integration program expand far beyond their original trial period, but success had brought its own complications. The council chamber was impressive, designed to accommodate the various physical and environmental needs of a dozen species. Admiral Morrison sat at the head of a curved table, flanked by Ambassador Veltran of the Centauri Republic, Hive Mind Designate Zek, 9 of the Silicon Collective, and Trade Representative Gorlak of the Asteroid Miners Consortium. But the most significant addition was Alpha Claw Ripper himself, now holding the formal title of Pack Leader and Guardian Representative within the Alliance structure. "Engineer Chen," Admiral Morrison began, "your integration program has produced results that frankly surprised all of us. The Council has asked you to provide a comprehensive assessment before we move forward with the proposed expansion." Marcus activated the holographic display showing statistical data that would have seemed impossible just a year ago. In the past 12 months, Zephyrian Guardian units have successfully completed 47 operations across 8 sectors. They've eliminated 12 criminal organizations, rescued over 3,000 enslaved beings, and recovered stolen property worth approximately 2 billion Alliance credits. Impressive numbers, acknowledged Ambassador Veltran, but statistics don't tell us about the cultural changes within Zephyrian society itself. How stable is this transformation? That's the most remarkable part, Marcus replied, shifting the display to show social and psychological assessments. The Zephyrians haven't abandoned their warrior culture. They've evolved it. They're still hunters, but they've chosen to hunt threats to civilization rather than civilization itself. He gestured toward Alpha Claw Ripper. Pack leadership has adapted to include new forms of strength and contribution. Technical specialists like Scartail now hold positions of respect equal to traditional warriors. The pack structure has become more flexible, more inclusive of different talents. Hive, Mind, Designate, Zek. 9's optical sensors focused intently on the data. Our analysis suggests that this represents a fundamental shift in Zephyrian evolutionary development. They are becoming something unprecedented, a predator species that has chosen cooperation over competition as their primary survival strategy. Trade Representative Gorlak rumbled his agreement. The Miners Consortium has seen a 73% reduction in piracy in sectors patrolled by Guardian units. Our insurance costs alone have dropped by 40%. But it was Alpha Claw Ripper who provided the most telling assessment when he rose to address the council. The massive Zephyrian had changed over the past year, his bearings somehow combining the lethal confidence of an apex predator with the measured wisdom of a leader who understood responsibility. "Honored council members," he began, his command of diplomatic language now fluent, "when the human Marcus Chen first spoke to my pack of becoming guardians rather than raiders, many of us believed he spoke of weakness disguised as strength. We were wrong." He activated his own section of the display, showing tactical analyses of their various operations. "We have faced prey more dangerous and cunning than any we hunted in our raiding days. Criminal masterminds protected by technology and resources that dwarf what simple merchants could muster. These hunts have tested every aspect of our abilities, forcing us to become stronger, smarter, more adaptable." Alpha Claw Ripper turned to face Marcus directly. "But the greatest change is not in our capabilities. It is in our purpose. We no longer hunt merely to survive or to prove our strength. We hunt to protect those who cannot protect themselves. This has given meaning to our existence that we never knew was possible." Marcus felt a surge of emotion as he listened to words he never could have imagined coming from the fierce predator who had once threatened to tear out his throat. But even more moving was what happened next. Scartail, now bearing the title of Chief Engineering Officer for Guardian Operations, stepped forward to address the council. The young Zephyrian, who had once been scorned for his technical interests, now commanded respect throughout the Alliance fleet. "If I may add to my Alpha's words," Scartail said, his own diplomatic skills polished through months of interspecies cooperation, "the human taught us that intelligence is not the enemy of strength. It is the foundation of true strength. We have learned to think as well as fight, to plan as well as hunt, to build as well as destroy." He gestured to a section of the display showing technological innovations that had emerged from the Guardian program. Defrian biotechnology integrated with human engineering principles has produced advances that benefit all Alliance species. Our ships are faster, our weapons more precise. Stranded on an alien ship to be devoured by wolf-like creatures, the human engineer rose as their leader.